Good morning, everyone. It's Mark Pelka here from Office of Policy Management, Criminal Justice Policy and Planning. Thank you very much for dedicating your time today to this morning's CJPAC meeting. We were unable to meet in December due to a series of scheduling challenges resulting from the movement of our meeting up not only 1 but 2 weeks because of the way the holidays fell in that month. So this is a real pleasure and to be back together again as we delve into topics for the month of January, our first meeting of the new calendar year. And we will be able to review a new monthly indicators report. I'm going to ask my coworker Kyle to provide an overview of some of the recent indicators and findings in the criminal justice data. We will be reviewing a new national report that was released in October on the topic of state strategies regarding competence to stand trial. The director of the Forensic Services Division at DEMIS, Dr. Norco, has generously dedicated some time to reviewing the report, putting the report in the Connecticut context, and even putting together a presentation to share with us some features of that report and some Connecticut-specific analysis that he's conducted. And I think that will generate, given the representation we have here on CJPAC, from public defenders to prosecutors to the judiciary to law enforcement to DEMIS to community providers, opportunity for some really rich insights, to say nothing of pretrial and pretrial supervision and various diversion programs. So it should be a really great meeting. And we'll end it with some updates to hear what our issues have come to the fore in your respective agencies and organizations. The first two things I'll do is just go through the roster to say hello, everybody, to let them have a chance to say a quick hello and make sure microphones are working. And then after that, we'll go to the minutes. I've had a chance to speak to many members so far. I'll just cite the names I see either in the chat or on my screen. Humayun Beg from Director of the Criminal Justice Information System. Glad you're here, sir. And I know we have a governing board meeting this afternoon, so you've got a hectic schedule, I can tell.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm glad to be here. And this afternoon we have our governing board meeting, so we hope to see a lot of you over there as well. Thank you.
Very good, sir. I'll be swapping in for my boss, and we'll be attending that meeting. So I look forward to seeing you.
It'll be good to see you.
Yes, sir. I mentioned earlier from DEMIS, not only do we have Dr. Norco here, Director of Forensic Services Unit Division, but we also have the Deputy Director, Mr. Chris Burke, here too on the line. Good morning, gentlemen. Glad you're here representing DEMIS.
Good morning, everyone.
From the judicial branch, Judge Carroll, thank you. I know that you and Director Roberge have you've really overcome some challenges with duplicating, multiple items on your calendar, and you've done your best always to attend CJPAC. Thank you for joining us today. We're glad you're here, gentlemen.
It's always a top priority, Mark. I should also note that I've invited Judge Gold to participate today, and I see that he is online. Judge Gold has been working very closely with Dr. Norco on the competency evaluation initiative, so he may be able to supplement whatever information or questions come up when we discuss that.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Judge Gold, I'm grateful you're here, sir. Thank you for joining, and I will try to make a reminder of myself to make sure that I seek to engage your insights on the discussion, but please don't hesitate to raise your hand virtually or to weigh in. I'll keep an eye out for you, sir.
I sure will. Thank you very much.
Great. And then I'm going to hold CCADB to the end. I know we had to acknowledge the departure of the former director, so we'll hold on that for just a little bit. I want to give a time to say a warm welcome to a new member. And then from the State Department of Education, John Frassinelli, I have a pleasure working with you on other boards and commissions. I know you're attending on behalf of SDE, recognizing that our usual participant from the agency, Deputy Commissioner Charlene Russell Tucker, cannot be with us, but we're so happy you're here, sir. Thank you for being here. And Deputy Chief State's, let's see here, on the Kevin Lawler, Deputy Chief State's Attorney. I'm so happy you're here, sir. I know this is a busy day with the the CJC meeting. So thank you for making the time. Glad you're
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And then Attorney Rapillo, I'm so grateful you joined. I am definitely eager to receive your insights too on the presentation we'll be receiving on mental health. Thank you for making the time. Glad you're here.
Good morning, Mark. Happy to be here.
And Chief Kinney, I had a pleasure speaking with you. I feel like we could call it the green room, the chatting that we get to do before the meeting begins. It's a pleasure being with you in the green room, sir, and just hearing about all the ways that you and your department and law enforcement generally are responding during these unprecedented times impacted by the pandemic. But glad you're here, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Let's see, and then our State Victim Advocate Natasha Pierre. I'm so happy you're here, Attorney Pierre. Thank you for making the time. I see you on the screen, and grateful that you're here with us today for the discussion. And Chairman Giles, I spoke to you a bit earlier. Glad you're here, sir. Thank you for representing the Board of Pardons and Paroles. Glad you're here, sir.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, all.
And then let's see, who else am I? Thank you. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm trying to make us not just make a formal roll call, but the outreach. I'm from the Alliance Against Sexual Violence. Lucy Nolan, so happy you're here. I know that the director, Beth Hamilton, had a irresolvable conflict on her schedule. Glad you're here representing the Alliance, though.
Thank you. Good morning.
And from the Department of Correction, I don't see Commissioner Quiros, but I do see, fortunately, District Administrator Garcia. I want to give a DOC a chance to say hello if anyone from the agency cares to.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mark. Thank you very much. Yes, I will be sitting in for Commissioner Quiros this morning as he is preparing for his confirmation hearing, and I'm available for any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you very much.
You're
you did a spectacular job, District Administrator, at the PJR meeting last week, and I will try to live up to the new standard that you created.
Testing
Thank
some
you.
they're using those same locations.
Thank you.
And next, I guess I see Ms. Siegel from the Department of Veterans Affairs. I don't know if Commissioner is on as well or other members of the department. I wanted to say thank you.
Good morning. Hi, it's just me today. Thank you.
Oh, we're lucky to have you here. Thank you for making the time. Thrilled you're participating in this discussion. Before I turn to the, sorry, I'm clumsily navigating the participant list. Before I turn to CCADV, is there anyone I've unintentionally omitted on making introductions that would wish to say hello at this time?
Sarah Fox from the Connecticut Coalition to End Homelessness.
Oh, terrific, Sarah. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Certainly.
Jerry, thank you for your patience, and thank you to Stephen Epler-Epstein. I wanted just to say a special thank you for the coalition represented today. I got a little bit emotional at the November CJPAC meeting, bidding farewell in her current capacity to Karen Jarmock as she took this new opportunity for herself. And I know the coalition is going through a transition period. And this is our chance, I think, to hear from the acting director and CEO, Stephen Epler-Epstein, who, and as well as Jerry. So I wanted to give the Jerry Wiles. So I wanted to give the chance to the coalition to say hello and to acknowledge any new members who are here.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Jerry Wild with CCADV, and I'd like to introduce you all to Steve Epler-Epstein. For those of you who don't know Steve, he was the executive director for Connecticut Legal Services, and he has certainly been a family member of CCADV for over 20 years. So we're very excited to have him leading our organization and working with us again.
Good morning, everybody. Some familiar faces. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Karen did get that great opportunity at the Hartford, which is Hartford's opportunity as well. So it's good to see her succeeding there. The board of CCADV is moving forward with the search for the permanent executive director. And so I don't know how many meetings I'll be able to be with you, but at least a few. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
so welcome, always welcome for as long as we can work with you in this capacity, and CCADV always is welcome to the meetings. We've received as a commission some tremendous presentations from various members of the coalition, from Karen, from presented on both on the recent report from the coalition about the reduction in dual arrests, looking at some efforts there to provide law enforcement with tools in that area. We received a presentation on the lethality assessment program and how officers are able to call for assistance on site when responding to such a situation. We received really great insights on the impact of the pandemic on survivors, and I look forward to future presentations as well, and we are always benefiting from the discussion. We benefited over previous months, everyone, from receiving various analysis about the overlap between homelessness and involvement in the criminal justice system. CJPAC kind of directed a analysis that matched exits from the Department of Correction and admissions to emergency shelter. And for the reasons of that focus, we have had the CEO of the Coalition to End Homelessness attending the meetings. And Sarah, I hope you don't mind me just lurching right into to share the news that the coalition announced, I think late last week, that Dr. Richard Cho has taken a position with the Biden administration. I think tomorrow may be his last day formally, and he will be working at the Department of Housing and Urban Development as a senior advisor. So one of those examples of a loss for Connecticut, but a gain for the federal government. And ultimately, it's great to have a real champion of the intersection between criminal justice and housing. And that's true not just with efforts to provide housing assistance to people exiting correctional facilities, but also victims who are trying to leave situations in which they're experiencing sexual violence or domestic violence and secure housing for themselves. So I know he did a lot of work standing up those important initiatives, and I know that having a friend in the federal government can be very helpful. So Sarah, I want to just on behalf of, in my role, just thank the coalition for its involvement along these last several months. Wish my best to your outgoing boss, who I know had a conflict that couldn't make him be here today, but best wishes to the coalition during the transition, and thank you for everything you've contributed over the last many months.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Great. Well, I am going to move now to the minutes that I shared, the draft minutes from the November 19th meeting. I wonder if I could have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask for a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Mark, this is Gary from Judicial. Can I make a comment about the minutes?
Absolutely. We can amend if you wish.
Okay, Judge, page 2 of 4 under the branches updates, it's Judge Albis, A-L-B-I-S.
Okay.
And then also Judge Bozzuto, B-O-Z-Z-U-T-O.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Those seem like minor fixes that we can make without having to revote. If you agree, Director, and we can reflect those correct spellings in our final minutes.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. And Ms. Siegel is apparently testing out the hand raising feature, which I was failing on before, and I'm wondering if she may have a comment or question to raise.
Yes, please. I was not in attendance at the last meeting. It was Commissioner Sadi only.
Oh.
So I just wanted to make that notation. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that. We'll make that adjustment. Thank you. And thank you for using the hand feature. Not a necessary way of weighing in the meeting. I want everyone to feel comfortable contributing however they wish, but now at least I'm able to see the hands, which is glorious. Very good. Well, thank you, everybody. We can turn next to the monthly indicators report. And Kyle, I know you may wish to share your screen, so I want to allow you just to get settled there and maybe allow me a bit of a point of personal privilege to share some exciting developments in the OPM Criminal Justice Policy and Planning Division family. In December, Kyle and his wife welcomed their daughter, into the world. And this was very extraordinary news. I'll let Kyle share her name. Our division has demands of as many photos as we can possibly see. And luckily we have happy and loving mother and father with a pretty expansive Google Drive of photos. So our division is well satisfied with photos. But you know, when you work closely with someone, you really have a stake in the well-being of themselves and their family, as the leaders on the commission know. So we have been in our division trying to support Kyle and his wife and daughter however we can during this period, and he's just doing an extraordinary job of helping out where possible, but concentrating first and foremost, necessarily and understandably on the new little one that entered the world. So Kyle, sorry for embarrassing you, but I knew that a lot of people view you as a close colleague too through CJPAC, and I wanted to share the extraordinary news.
Thanks very much, Mark. I appreciate that. And just everyone to know, our daughter was born on on December 15th, 2020, rather unexpectedly. She was due in February. So she's recovering in the NICU. She's doing phenomenally. She's a bit premature, but she's otherwise completely healthy and developing. And so my absence was a bit earlier than we anticipated. We're learning that it's our first child, and we're learning that children tend to dictate the schedule of their parents more so than we would like to have happen. So I've been in and out intermittently, and Mark in the division have been really phenomenal in accommodating my family and my needs to be with them and to support them in this time. And our daughter's name is Isabel Helen Baudouin. She's a little stinker. She's cute as can be, and hopefully we'll have her home really soon. And when that happens, you'll probably get another outgoing message from my email saying I'll be out for another block of time to accommodate that and help my wife and Isabel transition to our home. So thanks, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity to share that with everyone. I'm a proud father. I'm very, very happy to have her and love her immensely already. So I'm the cliche dad.
Chairman, Board of Pardons Chair Chairman Giles, give you a round of applause, and I think we all are so happy for you.
Thank you so much.
I know many of us are on mute, so maybe there's some jazz hands or clapping going on and off across the CJPAC membership. But I have my godson's mom is a NICU nurse up in Western New York, and I know several adults and teens who are preemies, and I just think that there's a certain fighting instinct that is reflected in the photos you shared. I think your daughter is gonna. I cannot wait for her to be home and with you and the family. It's gonna and just begin getting out there in the world. It's an extraordinary to see, and we're all hoping for the best for you and your whole family during this transition period. And you're going to be an amazing dad. You are an amazing dad. So.
Well, the NICU staff is already have already know what I do for a living, because I've asked them repeatedly for trend data as to how she's doing and where she's falling within the relative percentiles, and all the trends are pointing positively. So we're really happy about that. She's gaining weight. She's progressing just as she should, and just maturing. Just a matter of time, and she'll be home, and we'll snuggle with her 24 hours a day. But so. Transitioning from trend data about my daughter and my personal life, we can share some trend data around the criminal justice system in Connecticut today with our January monthly indicators report. How's that for a clumsy segue? So what I've thrown up on your screens, everyone, I'm sharing is our January monthly indicators report for 2021, first one of the new year. And what we typically reflect, and what takes up the most landscape on our first page is our prison population forecast that we produce every February. And we compare that against what the actual prison population is looking like relative to that forecast. The chart one, which you see on your screen, in the dark blue squares, you see the actual prison population going back all the way to January 2019. In the white squares, you see our 2019 forecast. And in the light blue squares, you see our 2020 forecast. So we like to show a couple years of data so you can see how we performed how the prison population performed relative to our forecast in the preceding year and in the most recent year as well. You can see last year, thanks to some change in perspective, we looked like we did really well in predicting what the prison population would track over 2019. But in 2020, there was a massive disruption to our prison system and to our criminal justice system and to our life as we know it with the COVID-19 pandemic. And that was reflected in the way the prison population declined rather precipitously in April, May, and June. And the last time we shared some of this information with this group back in October, November, the prison population was still experiencing rather sizable declines month over month. And what we've seen over the last several months, since we haven't had this conversation, is something returning more to our typical seasonal patterns, which are reflected in the dark blue boxes at the very bottom of the screen. You can see that the drops haven't been as severe as they were in April, May, and June, which is suggestive of a return to a more normal pattern in the next year. But what we're already seeing in January, what we normally see every January, is a bit of an influx of newly sentenced inmates who come into the system from being out on bail or being newly sentenced and admitted into the DOC. And as of right now, our indicators don't suggest that that's currently going on to the degree that we would normally see like we have in the past. Actually, our sentence population is declining in January, which is a bit of an anomaly, which is why we're struggling a bit, and we're continuing to work on our forecast for 2021, because the system seems to still be experiencing some disruptive forces by COVID-19, and we'd like to account for that as best we can, but realizing that some of these unknowns are maybe unknowable in terms of how things will resume and how the system will respond in the coming year. I just wanted to point out in the highlight to the left, transitioning from the the justice involved population we normally focus on, which is the prison population. If we look at another population, which doesn't get often as much attention in our report, is the probation population. So people who are sentenced to a term of supervision by Court Support Services Division. That population has been trending very similar, and we've noted this in the past, to the overall prison population as well. But we noticed that in this past year that the adult probation population dipped below 32,000 people on adult supervision. And that, just to put that into some perspective, we wanted to mention that number had been 55,000 as recently as 2008. So we're seeing similar trends in different populations among our justice involved people in Connecticut. I just wanted to highlight that in this month's indicators report. And I'm going to transition from talking about this slope and trend line and how we saw this rapid reduction and then a relative stabilization late in 2020 by talking about the flows of the prison population, the ins and outs, if you will. And that's what we focused on chart 2A this month, and I'll scroll down to that now. And so what we looked at was the number of people who are admitted to a DOC facility versus a number of people who are released or discharged. So basically, I coalesced or aggregated all of the various ways people can come into prison and all the ways they leave prison. So this is a very simplistic representation of all of the ins and outs in the prison system in Connecticut every month going back to January of 2017. And what you see is above the horizontal line are the inputs and below are the exits. And so there's a relatively stable mirroring month over month of these two metrics going over time, which is why the prison population tends to shift or change month over month in relatively small terms. And so we've been declining, but only because the marginal difference between these exits is slightly more than the inputs we're getting or the admissions every month. And that's a really stable population and change over time. And we see these two, if you fold this chart at the horizontal line, it would basically mirror itself over this entire period. But when we get into 2020, we see the disruption of COVID, and that the admission number really doesn't match up with the exit number. And so there's this massive disruption between March, April, May, and June. But what I thought was kind of fascinating is that large systems tend to have a self-leveling impact, a self-leveling effect. And we kind of see that towards the end of the time period here in 2020. And we see the inputs beginning to match the exits fairly consistently. And that's why we see the prison population sort of level off and not decline to the steep degree we saw in the middle of 2020. I just wanted to bring that out and show the amount of churn that is going on every month to move the prison population, even a few hundred inmates. It takes a lot of ins and outs to realize that kind of change in what we represent as a static figure, as a number, a head count every month. What we typically see are, upwards of 4,000 movements to achieve that net change month over month. And I just wanted to make that more clear and visually represent it this month in the monthly indicators report as we prepare our 2021 forecast, which we hope to unveil at the next month's CJPAC meeting. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I'll turn it back over to you. And if there's anything else you think that might warrant discussion or highlight in the report, please let me know. I can go to that.
Thank you, Kyle. I really appreciate it. It just looking at April of 2020, you just realize what an anomalous month that was, and you can just see the kind of gradual return, or as you say, regression to the mean in the months that followed. And I think what's helpful is that your data not only shows variations month to month within a given year, but comparisons to prior years, which surfaces the various seasonal fluctuations that affect the system. And I would reiterate before I ask if any folks have questions or reactions, that we benefit from a monthly review of these indicators and discussion of stakeholders of the criminal justice system each month, so that we can prepare. We can look for various harbingers or indicators or changes or emerging patterns, so that we can plan effectively for impacts elsewhere in the justice system, or anticipate, as opposed to having to react. And that's really special. Anyone on the meeting have any questions or reactions or input for Kyle?
I have just a question. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to be forecasted, but has any thought about the impact when the courts go back to a full docket system? I know that most of the courts now are on a reduced docket system. What the impact will be down the road on the prison population?
Mark, perhaps, this is Judge Carroll, perhaps I can briefly respond to the Chief's question. It's going to be a real challenge, Chief. I think that I spoke with Judge Gold and Judge Bizzuto about this very fact yesterday, and our biggest challenge is going to be addressing those cases in which motions for speedy trials have been filed. So that would be dealing with the pretrial population. And once we are able to resume summoning jurors and open up our jury courtrooms and jury assembly rooms, we will probably be prioritizing and focusing on those cases which speedy trial motions have been filed in, to start attacking that backlog. I think we have a constitutional obligation to address those first. And by doing that, by limiting your focus on those matters only, the other pending cases on which trials have been elected continue to mount. I mean, it's just an unavoidable consequence of what we're all going through with the pandemic. And in Kyle's presentation earlier, he hit it right on the head. These are unknowable factors which impact the ability to project. We're all hopeful that the availability of vaccinations will help lessen the problem. But we continue to get more troubling news with each passing day, including the news that surfaced yesterday and today with respect to the more virulent strain of the virus being present here in Connecticut, and some speculating that within a matter of weeks, that will be the predominant strain that is infecting Connecticut's population. So to a very large extent, we have to react to that news, and we have to adjust our operations within the court to provide the highest level of public health and protection for our judges, our staff, and for anyone who comes into our buildings. The challenges change almost on an hour-by-hour basis, and I think in large effect we've been able to respond to them well. We've made significant accommodations in all of our courthouses to deal with these issues. And Judge Gold, as our chief administrative judges for criminal matters, is in regular contact with all our criminal PJs and is trying to be as innovative as possible in coming up with solutions to move pending cases forward without compromising anybody's health. So it's a challenge. I know that some people are growing impatient and think we should be doing more. But I have said since March of 2020 that whatever we do in the judicial branch, we are guided first by a desire to make sure that public health and public safety is protected. So, Chief, I hope that answers your question. I'm sure that in some measure, it mirrors what you and local police departments throughout the state are encountering as well. You've had to pivot, you've had to change, you've had to be nimble and responsive to the conditions that we face each and every day. And if you or anyone else has any further questions about this, I'll be happy to respond to those questions, and perhaps even Judge Gold can jump in and assist.
If I may, Mark, Your Honor, this by no means was a criticism of the courts. You guys have been fantastic in working with us. I've contacted you regarding some issues, minor issues we've had. I'm just curious is that, as the court dates get extended further and further out, and once you get back to work, how this is going to impact the numbers going into the correction system as your trials, you said the speedy trials. Do those tend to be cases that have incidents where people tend to do more, get more admitted into the system? I was not criticizing. We've worked well with Gary Roberge, his group, and the judges have been fantastic in dealing with this because it's all brand new to all of us.
Yeah.
Just a concern down the road that we're going to be seeing a huge influx once things, I don't know if that ever goes back to being normal, but a huge influx of people being sentenced to the correction system down the road.
Yeah, first of all, Chief, and nothing that you said was taken as a criticism in any way. And indeed, you've been a great partner with the judicial branch throughout this process. We have worked together, and the same has been true with the state police and other local police departments as well. I suppose the answer to your question is, yeah, it's going to have an impact, except to the extent that judges working with the state's attorneys and the defense bar may be creative in sentencing choices that they come up with. There may be opportunities for more sentences and dispositions premised upon community supervision and participation in programs, but that all remains to be seen. There's no doubt that many of the criminal cases that are pending with the defendants who are currently out on bail may ultimately result in sentences of incarceration. And that, going back to Kyle's report, will impact the numbers with respect to the sentence population, which is currently on a slow decline, largely because, as you point out, Chief, there are very few dispositions currently pending, which are resulting in jail sentences. And those who are currently incarcerated are finding that their sentences are ending out and they're being released upon end of sentence. So yeah, I think that you can expect that there's going to be an impact once we get back up and running in a more comprehensive fashion. But I also like to emphasize the fact that the court's never closed. We did suspend operations in some locations for a short period of time in order to allow us an opportunity to install personal protection equipment and make the facilities as safe as possible during that same time period. We also created from virtually nothing other than the existing platform we had between the courts and the Department of Correction, a virtual network which allowed us to transition much of the work we do in the courts from in-person, in-court proceedings to online virtual proceedings. That's worked very effectively. It's proven to be a matter of great convenience for all the participants, and most significantly, it's a safer way to proceed. So there are a lot of unknowns. All I can tell you is that we continue to analyze the situation on a daily basis. We continue to try to be creative in the way that we conduct our business, and we've got a couple of new initiatives underway. The initiative that Dr. Norco is going to be talking about today is but one of those initiatives that we have underway. We're moving towards a situation where applications for diversionary programs will all be done remotely. Again, eliminating the need for people to come into court and apply before a judge for those programs. And we're coming up with creative new ways to determine eligibility and grant those applications. So it's a never-ending process for us. We're kind of hunkered down, expecting that the circumstances under which we're operating right now are going to continue for the foreseeable future, particularly as we continue to see mounting challenges with the distribution of the vaccination. Whereas maybe a few weeks ago, we thought, hey, it's just a matter of time before we're all vaccinated, we're all safe, and we can all return to normal. The news that continues to come out of Washington and elsewhere suggests that even that is not a realistic expectation at this point. So it's not my intention to paint a completely glum and dark picture. My hope is to reassure everyone, all of the stakeholders in the system, that we are on top of these issues. We are partnering with the Division of Criminal Justice, the Division of Public Defender Services, with the private bar to try to come up with processes that respond to the current situation and do so in an effective way.
Thank you, Judge Carroll. To sort of answer my part of that question in terms of what it's going to look like for the prison population and how we're modeling it for 2021, it's, to your point, thanks for reflecting that there's certain things that are just unknowable.
Right.
And so one of the things we think about, though, are the flows that go through the system, and there are limitations on those volumes because of practical matters. We can't hear every pending case at one time in the judicial system. Those cases have to be called before, and there's certain ceiling and limitations on how many cases can be resolved or disposed in a given month. And what we expect, sort of as a preview of coming attractions for next month for the prison population forecast, is that as vaccinations roll out and as court business is able to sort of return very gradually to pre-COVID levels in terms of number of dispositions per month, we might see a sustained uptick for a while once things are fully operational. But that's going to be, really what that's going to do is offset a decline in the prison population, sort of mitigate the steepness of the decline that we've seen over these past several months. And so it's a complex picture of flows through the system, and there's really no way of knowing how many of those pending cases are going to result in prison time or an incarceral sentence.
Right.
But what our expectation is that we will see, as courts reopen, but as courts ramp up volumes, we'll see more sentenced inmates coming into the prison system, and that will just be balanced by the numbers that are leaving as well. So I hope that helps a little bit in thinking about how our model works, Chief Kenny. But thank you.
Thank you, Judge Carroll, very much for that detailed response. This is exactly what I hope for each month, is that we can provide the baseline overview of indicators and emerging patterns and trends in the data to enable the criminal justice stakeholders who know the system better than anyone else to comment on, from where they're situated, their observations and their depictions of system operations. And a similar example to that was just highlighting in our monthly indicators report, I think back in August, about the collaborative resolution of pretrial cases during COVID-19 and the way that the judicial branch's court support services was providing electronic records to the chief state's attorney, the chief public defender, who were transmitting that information to attorneys in local courts to review cases. And we noted in our monthly indicators report an increase in cases resulting in a release by court order, which was a segment of the pie that we hadn't really seen before. So we try to home in as close as we can on the data to surface issues that are apparent to us so we can promote these discussions. So thank you.
And Mark, if I may, I neglected to add as well that as we continue to analyze the process and the cases that are currently pending, Judge Gold, Judge Bizzuto, and I spoke yesterday about a process by which we're prioritizing those cases which are pending and warrant the closest possible supervision and monitoring by the court. And at the very top of the list, obviously, are the domestic violence cases. We want to make certain that we're targeting those cases and bringing those cases in for routine, regular monitoring in the earlier months of pandemic-related procedures. Many cases were given long continuances. There's no doubt in our mind and in our analysis that there has to be a carve-out for domestic violence cases. They are the ones that cause us the greatest concerns, the ones that have the greatest potential for additional violence. I think that there's a story in the news this morning about a case in Milford which highlights that issue. So I want all of our stakeholders to be aware of the fact that we know that we are compelling our presiding criminal judges throughout the state to isolate those cases, bring them in on a more regular basis. I know that CSSD is working hard to make sure that those cases have the highest level of monitoring while those individuals are out in the community. In that respect, I'm happy to see that Steve Epler-Epstein has now joined CCADV. Steve has a long record of working collaboratively with the judicial branch, and that is certainly going to continue in his new role. And I know that Jerry has worked extensively with Judge Bizzuto over the last couple of years in addressing these issues. So we're sensitized to that issue. We're prioritizing those cases, and we hope to be able to maybe set out a carve-out docket in each judicial district, which will be addressing domestic violence cases only. Obviously, we're limited in what we can do, but those matters deserve the highest possible priority.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Additional insight. Any other comments or questions, reactions? Okay, very good. Well, thank you very much, Kyle, for your work. And I know that you enlisted the work of other members of our unit this month, and Patrick Leka in particular did an extraordinary job on delving into the monthly and doing the work. So this time is enabling our unit and division to adapt to changing circumstances and enable all of us to take on new work and stretch and grow to do some of the contribute to the very many deliverables that you produce for us. So.
Yes, Mark, I'm sorry, I was deficient. My team, Kevin and Patrick, have done an exceptional job in picking up since I was absent for a good part of December and early January and putting this report together and the prior month's report, which is available on our website. Patrick is our new research analyst and Kevin is our lead planning analyst. I think this might be Patrick's first CJPAC meeting. He comes to us with a background from the governor's prevention partnership and has a strong background in analytics and data analysis that he developed while studying at Central Connecticut State University under Dr. Cox, a name that's familiar to a lot of folks around CJPAC as well. And he's done a phenomenal job in picking up this report rather quickly, much quicker than I did when I started here a few years ago. But with he and Kevin, I feel like our research unit's in really good hands, even with my intermittent absence I deal with some family stuff. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. And we can look forward to the February CJPAC meeting. We'll be presenting 2 new reports. First, the updated recidivism analysis, and second, the correction population forecast for the new calendar year. So we look forward to sharing that information with everybody, and I hope it's a good value. Dr. Norco, I want to give you just a few minutes just to get situated to become a presenter for the screen. I think this might be something new. I believe you have access to share your screen, and I'll let. Oh my gosh, very good. I wanted just to share. I think that the discussion, just looking at the tremendous work that Dr. Norco has done, and based on the significance of the topic, we'll probably spend approximately 45 minutes with presentation and discussion. Certainly, that gives us a buffer for more time if we need. That will eat into the time we have for updates. So I thought I would suggest that we make updates truly discretionary to who wishes to provide them. So what I can do is, looking at how much time we have left, just invite anyone to come forward with providing an update. That might take off some of the burden or pressure for everyone to share one. And it's a reflection of just a limit in time. I think I probably was too indulgent with kind of reconnecting with everybody and resetting just because we had taken a month off. So I love updates, and I really like to give them as much time as they need. This meeting, however, might be a little bit briefer, and for that reason, I will probably just be asking anyone who wishes to come forward with an update. And that will give us a chance, I think, to spend a little bit, without feeling as rushed about it. So I mentioned at the outset just a bit about the new report called Just and Well, Rethinking How States Approach Competency to Stand Trial. I believe the members have gotten copies of the report as well as an executive summary. They're also available on the CJPAC website. And while Dr. Norco begins, I can drop the report into the chat for anyone who wishes to have that up or have it for posterity's sake. But my many thanks to Dr. Norco for taking the initiative to delve into the report and to bring this report to the groups to review and to share his expert insights on Connecticut perspective. I could say a whole lot more, and I tend to ramble, but I'm going to cut myself off, Dr. Norco, and turn the floor over to you, sir.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud.
Okay, good, because I lost the little screen when I went to my slideshow. And are you seeing the correct version of the slides?
I am indeed, and my only suggestion would be to switch into presenter mode, just so we can get the full screen. That icon at the bottom, just it's the little kind of little screen icon.
Right.
It's just okay. Sorry.
Is it better now?
It hasn't expanded just yet. So we just see the whole PowerPoint. It's not bad. It's just I know you can probably get to the full screen.
Okay, I'm gonna end this.
Oh, actually, I think you're that nice ribbon you have up there says from beginning. So if you go down and all the way to the left. Oh, terrific.
All right. Okay. Are you seeing the right version of it now, or are you seeing the presenter view?
We're seeing your PowerPoint screen, and I'm wondering, sir, on the bottom row, if I'm focused, so you go down all the way at the bottom of the screen, right where it says slide 1 of 26, and scroll to the right. I believe that there are some other icons. Whoops.
Okay.
It's a minor thing, sir. So we
no,
can go
it's all right. Did that
do? Oh my gosh, fantastic!
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, good. We got that. Okay, let's move on. So this is a report that was prepared by the Council of State Governments Justice Center, along with a number of other national organizations. It was released in October. It was released in response to the fact that this has been a growing problem for states across the country over the last 15 years or so. they didn't do a press release back in October because they thought they wouldn't get much attention with the election going on, and I'm not sure if they're planning another formal release. But I think it's an important document and useful for us to take a look at. So this is what I'm going to do over the next several minutes. Is first of all, just for people who aren't familiar with competence to stand trial, is to at least define it and briefly review the processes, then go through some of the highlights of the report, especially the 10 strategies that are recommended in the report. And then I'm going to describe the Connecticut context for all this with some of our data and the relationship of those strategies to our situation in Connecticut, and then end with a potential pilot idea. So this is the language from our statute. Defendants have to be competent to stand trial throughout the entire trial process. And the definition is that a defendant is not competent who is unable to understand the proceedings against him or her, or to assist in his or her own defense. So it's a two-prong evaluation. People are presumed to be competent, but a person can be found not competent by a preponderance of the evidence. And either the defense counsel, the state's attorney, or the court can offer a request for an examination of whether someone's competent to stand trial. Those evaluations in Connecticut are performed by clinical staff from DEMAS. We have offices in Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, and Norwich. The evaluations are performed either by a sole psychiatrist or by a three-person team composed of a psychiatrist, a social worker, or an APRN, and a psychologist. The statute requires that the exam be completed within 15 business days of the order, that the report be filed with the court within 21 business days, and the evaluations are performed in DOC for persons who are held in custody, or in the community for people who are out on a promise to appear or out on bond, or in some other location as needed. For example, if someone is hospitalized and has picked up a charge during a lengthy hospitalization. The evaluators are asked to opine whether the person is competent, not competent, but restorable, or not competent and not restorable. And the definition for being restorable is that there has to be a substantial probability that the person can be restored within the maximum period of placement if provided treatment, and that maximum period is 18 months or the maximum possible sentence, whichever is lower. The restorations for the majority of people are done through DEMAS. They're done either in the Whiting Forensic Hospital or in the community, but there are also restorations that are done in DDS that are all done in the community, or in DCF, either in the community or in the hospital. So now some highlights of the report. So the primary focus of the report is how to improve outcomes for individuals with serious mental illnesses who enter the competency to stand trial process. And in brackets here in all of these, I've put the page number in the report where you can find the specific reference in case you want to look for it and read about it more specifically. Now, the impetus for the report is the next item, which was that from 1999 to 2014, across the country, there was a 72% increase in the number of people being restored to competence in state hospitals. Now, only about half of the states responded, but we think that that data is fairly reliable. And the researchers estimated that half of those evaluations are for people charged only with misdemeanors.
I didn't look at it, because I had to get on another team.
Sorry, sir. We'll go ahead. It looks like taken care of. Okay.
Another thing that's pointed out in the report is the disparate handling of minority defendants. A disproportionate percentage of them are sent to secure facilities for restoration. So that's something that they highlighted. States also spend a significant amount of money from their mental health budgets on competency to stand trial, even though the competence processes really don't are not the equivalent of mental health treatment or full mental health treatment, and they don't necessarily ensure long-term improved outcomes. And they give an example of Florida, where 80% of the defendants who are restored had their charges dismissed, or they got time served, or they were placed on probation, and typically without mental health follow-up after they left the courthouse. Another point that's made in the report is that the barriers that states experience to civil commitment may well be related to the rise in competency restoration. That the harder it is to get people into the hospital for treatment on a civil basis, the more likely it may be that people are sent into the hospital using competence as a way of achieving that result. This has led to litigation in at least a dozen states over excessive wait lists. There are so many people being referred and so few state hospital beds that are available for this purpose, given that dramatic rise in restorations of 72%, that states have been found to in violation of individuals' constitutional rights to due process. And one example is Washington State, which so far has paid $85 million just in fines for failing to meet the court-ordered deadlines that were part of the consent decree that they reached with the plaintiffs. So the vision of the report is that competence processes should be reserved for cases where there's a strong interest in restoring someone so that they can face their charges. And when the state interest in prosecution is lower, that cases should be dismissed or the person should enter a diversion program in lieu of both evaluations and restoration. The other thing that's mentioned is that prevention of involvement in the criminal justice system should also be a strong focus of state efforts. And this requires attention to housing, transportation, and community-based treatment resources. The action steps that they recommend are prioritizing investment in community-based care, establishing diversion alternatives for both pre and post-arrest, and to limiting the use of competence stand trial processes to cases where there's a strong interest in adjudication. There are 10 recommended strategies that are proposed. The first is to convene a diverse group of stakeholders to develop a shared understanding of the current process. The second is to examine system data and information to pinpoint areas that could be targeted for improvement. The third is to provide training for professionals working at the intersection of criminal justice and behavioral health. The fourth is to create and fund a robust system of community-based care and supports that's accessible to everyone, both before, during, and after any criminal justice contact. The fifth is to expand opportunities for diversion at all points in the criminal justice system, including after competency has already been raised. The sixth is to limit the use of the competence process to cases that are inappropriate for dismissal or diversion. The seventh is to promote responsibility and accountability across systems. The eighth is to improve efficiency at each step of the process. The ninth, to conduct evaluations and restoration in the community when possible. And the 10th is to provide high quality and equitable evaluations and restoration services and ensure continuity of clinical care before, during, and after restoration and upon release. Now, I'm going to come back to those in the Connecticut context, but first let's take a look at some data. So no one in Connecticut is ever admitted to a state hospital for a competence to stand trial evaluation. We have not, this has been a part of our statute for as long as I know, and for years before that. This is not the case in many other states. In the last 15 years, that's been changing because of the demand that's been placed on state hospital beds. But a lot of states would admit people to a state hospital to do the evaluation. And we've always done these as in the community as outpatients. We've also never had a wait list for admission to the hospital for restoration. The day that a court orders that the person be sent for restoration, they go directly to the hospital. We've never interpreted our statute to allow us to delay in admitting someone, so we've always done that. Even when we experienced two discrete periods during my tenure where the census at the hospital was well over the maximum capacity, and we had to be very creative about finding space to house people. But we got through those periods and without having to delay admissions, which is a good thing, because what my colleagues experience in other states is that once you start a wait list, it's very difficult to relieve yourself from it, given the fact that you can't expand your bed capacity. Now, unlike the 72% national increase in restorations in the country between 99 and 2014, Connecticut actually experienced a 25% decrease in restorations from 2004 to 2012, which is the period for which we have data. I don't have data going back to 1999. And we think that that was related to the fact that in 2004, we developed jail diversion clinicians and programs in every arraignment court in the state. And also during that time period brought online a number of reentry programs. So we think that's what had to do with this decrease. There was an increase, however, in 2013 to 2016, back to the 2004 levels, and then some further drops after that, and then a very large drop in 2020. So let me show you that in graph form. So on this axis are the number of admissions for restoration per month to the hospital. And this chart goes from January of 2004, basically to the end of 2017. So you can see that it was about 20 per month in that early part. And over time, the trend was to get down in this 2011-2012 period to about 15 per month. Then there was a rise here again, back up to the 2004 levels at about 20 per month, and then another decline back down to what we were experiencing in 2012. There are some, extraordinary peaks like this one over time. Sometimes that's a problem, but other times it's not. This one was accompanied afterward by some drops. So the census didn't really get very high in the hospital. When the census gets high in the hospital, it's after a period of several months in a row where there are more than 20 admissions per month. Now, this chart will take us from 2012 through 2020 so that we can see the end here. So you can see the dramatic drop in 2020 as you would expect based on the reduction in the court's ability to hear cases and our ability to evaluate cases. This is a chart of the number of orders per calendar year and the number of completed evaluations. So the orange bars are the number of orders per year, and the gray bars are the number of evaluations that were completed by our teams. The mean number of evaluations ordered over this time period is 687. 2019 is something of an anomaly. It's actually 24% above the mean. And it represents a 42% increase over 2006. But I wouldn't say that's really a trend because it seems, in recent years, it's been fairly level in the 720 or so range. And that may just turn out to be an anomaly. And given the pandemic, we're not going to know for a while what the outcome will be. And just so that you know, the difference between the number ordered and the number completed is due to basically three things: people not showing up for their evaluations when they're out in the community, people refusing to be evaluated, and cases of evaluation requests that are withdrawn by the party requesting it. This is a chart of the number of people that are found, the percentage of people who are found, who are opined by our team to be competent. One of the things I left out, of course, is that our teams don't determine whether or not someone is competent. That decision is made by the judge. We just make a recommendation based on our evaluation. So you can see that this hovers about 50% plus or minus. The range is 49 to 57%. So we find about 50% of our evaluees to be incompetent. Most states, about a third of the people who are evaluated are found incompetent. So people are somewhat surprised when they hear that we find half of our evaluees to be incompetent. And that could be one of two things. And I think both of them actually are at play here. One is that I think we do a better job in our court system of identifying people for whom this is a real problem. So I think our attorneys and our judges are better at identifying people for whom to order evaluations. And the second thing is that I think our standards for competence culturally are a little higher than what I hear from my colleagues in other states. So I think we ask for a little bit more from defendants in order to find them competent, certainly for serious charges. And the last graph here of data, so it's a little complicated, but so these are the cases that are not sent to the hospital. So this is the number of cases per year that are sent and so these are, here's the 20 per year bar. So you can see that most of the time it's less than 20 in these various categories. And remember that about 200 people are being sent to the hospital each year. So this represents about 10% of the people that are sent to the hospital. The mustard color here are those who are restored outpatients in DEMAS. The bright green color are the people who are restored by DDS. Those are all done as outpatient. The orange color, orange red, is DCF outpatient, and the blue color is inpatient DCF. So, and these are not all of the evaluations that are done by DCF or the restorations that are done by DCF, because they also get ones referred from the juvenile courts, but we're not involved in that process. It's a completely different system. So these are only the cases of minors who are being tried in adult court. So you'll see that in recent years, the number of people that get sent to DCF for that purpose is usually 0 or 1. Okay, so the strategies in relation to Connecticut. So convening stakeholders. So of course, CJPAC seems to be a perfect group of stakeholders, particularly with our guests. And various work groups may be able to work on some of these items. The data systems, DEMAS data system needs significant improvement. There are things that I'm not able to share with you. For example, our data system won't allow me to tell you how many of the people that we've evaluated were charged only with misdemeanor offenses. So it might be possible for us to, by sharing data among various of our agencies, for example, in judicial, we might be able to get that data better, or if we improved our DEMA system, we'd be able to do it. Sharing other data with DOC and others, housing, for example, we could pinpoint better areas for improvement and clients that have significant needs, like people who are high service utilizers. If we had data on what the charges are, on their housing status, on past criminal justice involvement, health insurance, employment status, it would allow us to better direct interventions and develop policy. And one of the things that the report points out is that high rates of dismissal or time served may indicate use of competence in trial for cases with low state interest in adjudication. And again, I'm not able to present that data with what we have available so far. Number 3, the training. We are involved currently in doing training with the state's attorney's office on a number of these issues. That there was a training session just recently. Several more are planned. Other trainings are certainly possible, with the idea that if everyone in the system has a better idea of what diversion and community resources are possible, it may lead to an increased use of diversion instead of using competence as a gateway to treatment. In terms of having a robust system of community-based care, of course, we can enhance our current, we have diversion capacities within DMIS, within the branch, within the state's attorney's office, all of which could be enhanced. They all work well. We can expand training of our mental health clinicians to better identify clients who are at risk for criminal justice involvement and to be able to respond with a broader range of interventions, things that are more related to criminogenic need rather than to mental health or substance need, for example. The report, points out that investments in housing reduces criminal justice involvement and lowers overall costs, and that certainly can be an area where we can improve in Connecticut. Strategy 5 is about diversion at all points of the criminal justice system. This is a concept known as the sequential intercept model for taking people out of the justice system and getting them tied into services. We currently have programs in Connecticut at all phases of the sequential intercept model. There's room to expand and improve on all of them. The Council of State Governments report emphasizes early interventions through non-mandated care and appropriate supports. An example of this is Miami-Dade, which stopped ordering competency evaluations for people who were charged only with misdemeanors and then diverted those individuals. This is a chart of the intercepts in the sequential intercept model and the various points of contact with individuals with the criminal justice system. And just a quick list here of the programs that we have available at each of the various intercepts that are already in existence. We could spend a lot of time talking about these, but I won't do that here now. The sixth strategy, which may be the most compelling of them, is to limit the use of the process to cases for which dismissal or diversion are inappropriate. So there should be a compelling interest in restoring the person so that they should be adjudicated. And the report points out that for certain charges, restoring people to competence may not be worth the overall cost to the system. The seventh strategy, responsibility and accountability across systems, for example, using clinical liaisons and care coordinators more extensively. Arizona is an example of this, where they employed forensic peer support navigators to help defendants in the recovery. So these were people who have serious mental illness, who have been through the competence to stand trial process, and who are employed to help other individuals in that process and to engage with the treatment system. The strategy about improving efficiency, prior to COVID, this was actually not a particular challenge for Connecticut. Our statutes provide clear guidelines, and we've been good at adhering to those. And as I said, admitting people on the day that they were ordered to be admitted to the hospital for restoration. Strategy 9 about doing evaluations and restoration in the community. As I said, we do all of the evaluations in the community, at least not in the hospital. Community here might include a DOC facility. And the restoration is permitted in Connecticut statutes, and we do on average about 15 outpatient restorations per year compared to about 200 inpatient restorations per year. And obviously we could improve those numbers, which would require some further resources and some further training. The challenges to enhancing the number of people who are restored in outpatient methodologies are usually related to homelessness or housing insecurity, individuals' lack of adherence to their needed medication and other clinical services, and active substance abuse. So people who are using, people who are not taking their meds, people that don't have a stable housing situation, it's very hard to have them come in for appointments to learn about the competence process and be restored. So often those are the challenges that lead the courts to decide to send someone into the inpatient facility. And the last one is about continuity of care, and the report talks about it being critical to have clinical care plans that go beyond restoration and toward recovery, especially emphasizing warm handoffs. Our hospital teams work very hard to ensure that such plans are in place, especially when they anticipate that a defendant may well be released by the court upon restoration because they face low-level charges. But this also illustrates how the competence process are really kind of a costly interjection or interruption of what would otherwise be a clinical process. So that brings me to my last slide here, which is an idea about a possible pilot project for us to consider. So in this project, we could refer defendants who had only misdemeanor charges to diversion. We would need to create and enhance our forensic respite bed capacity in the community so that we could receive those defendants as needed and at least have them in a stable place to live, stable and a safe place to live while we were engaging them. So the respite bed would include clinical stabilization, case management services, the restoration or initiation of entitlements, engagement with forensic peer support specialists, housing outflow tracks, for example, forensic rental assistance programs where we have money to assist people with payments of rent, and employment services in follow-up care. We would also need to enhance our data systems so that we could perform the relevant analyses and assessments of intervention outcomes. So with that, I'm going to stop and end the slideshow and unshare my screen, and happy to take questions or comments.
Thank you, good sir. That was a terrific presentation, really substantive. And I see Director Begg has his hands up. And I wonder if I could just ask a clarifying question that may be helpful for other members. And I appreciate the distinction between restoration of competence and mental health treatment and recovery. Would you mind, Dr. Norco, just quickly, distinguishing the two, just so that we can understand those distinctions clearly?
Sure. So when someone gets sent for restoration, usually in the hospital, the goal of the treatment is to restore them to competence to stand trial. So to get them to a point where they understand the proceedings and can assist in their defense. It's not necessarily to completely enhance their mental health, although we try to be as comprehensive as possible. But many of these people are going to go back to the Department of Correction to await trial. So it's not necessarily about reconnecting them with the community. It's about ensuring that they're competent. If someone is going to be released, we do try to make some efforts to reach out. We try to connect them with treatment providers in the community as much as possible. But again, the end date for the hospitalization is going to be when the person is competent. So we can't keep people beyond the date at which they've achieved competence, even if they're perhaps not quite well yet. And could still use some further stabilization, and we're a little bit limited in what we can do in terms of the transition. So, like with a civil patient, we could arrange for people to make community visits as part of their transition and come back and to meet the people they're going to be working with and to see where they might be living. And we don't do that in competence because the person's with us by court order, and we can't do that kind of community transport.
Appreciate that, sir, very much. And I want to mention one flag and then indicate I think 3 people are eager to weigh in. And we did invite as a guest the Connecticut Department of Developmental Services, or DDS, and at a minimum, just to follow the presentation and to absorb information. I wanted just to emphasize that anyone is welcome to ask any questions they wish to. If just learning is helpful and observing is what helps, that's great, but feel free to weigh in as you see fit, anyone who's as a guest. So I'll start with Director Begg, and then after that, Attorney Rapillo and Attorney Lawler. Director Begg, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a great presentation, Dr. Narkov. I just wanted to point out that we have CJIS has an information exchange system and a search system which can allow you to, as far as gather information in the background. That would be a very easy thing for us to do, to provide you a screen where you could log in, or your folks can log in and look at the history. And as far as exchange is concerned, we'd have to look at your requirements and see what we can do, but we can certainly put in some links to both DOC, DCJ, police departments, and all of that, where whatever information that you need to come in from directly from them comes to you. And if you need to send information back to them, that can be done as well. That would take a little longer because that does require changes to our system, and our system is still going through some deployment. But immediately what we can offer is for you to be able to search and look at the history of a particular person, if like any of their interaction and convictions in criminal justice, their incarceration, or anything that is in the history. So just so you're aware. I think we've talked about it briefly in one of the meetings, but we never got any further. So I just wanted to raise that again.
Yes, thank you very much. That's of course one of the important kinds of collaborations that we were hoping to continue to enhance as part of presenting the report. What would be particularly helpful for us, for example, would be to be able to see aggregate data rather than case-by-case data. That's one of the limitations we have. So, for example, we could go into an individual case and find what the charges were, but we have no ability to get that out in terms of a report for, like, say, the 600 people that were evaluated in a year. How many of them faced only misdemeanor charges? I can't answer that question unless we go in and look at 600 individual cases. So that's not an efficient way of analyzing data. So those are the kind of collaborations that would be important for us to think about going forward.
So we can certainly talk to you about that, and I'll get you I'll send some information to use to put our system analysts and your folks together, and we can go from there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That sounds terrific. I appreciate the difference between like aggregate and case level and the ways that CJIS could help with that. Terrific example. Attorney Rapillo, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about this idea of a pilot. I would say it will need some kind of careful planning, just from the perspective of the Public Defender's Office. We're working with an indigent population. We try to avoid using competency to stand trial, particularly in lower level cases. So my guess is that folks that you're getting evaluations on for just misdemeanor charges are more complex people who probably have a history in front of the court. So if we're going to try to talk about a pilot for folks like that, we'll just have to be aware of who they are and make sure that whatever's being put into place is for that group, because I don't think most of those folks are sort of your typical first-time offenders that the court doesn't know about, because otherwise they would have already used up whatever court diversion is out there. So we'd be excited to partner on this.
Yes, I think you're right about that, which is why when we're thinking about this, we've talked about for a number of years whether we should try to propose something like what New York does by statute, which is that when people are found not competent on a misdemeanor charge, the charges get dropped, but the person gets sent to the hospital for 72 hours to evaluate them to see whether they meet criteria for civil commitment. We've always been worried that if we did something like that, that we wouldn't have the bed capacity in our civil system to bring those folks in. So the diversion options were somewhat limited, but if we had, but by enhancing respite bed capacity, we'd be able to hopefully take on some more of these challenging cases, the people who are really having trouble being stable, the people that the court is seeing repeatedly. Those are the ones that the court sends to the hospital because they feel like nothing's working. So really, this is about a system of trying to put together something that will hopefully better address those people that have complex needs.
think that makes good sense, sir. And I think part of, as we move through the discussion, I think one of the key questions we want to sort out are next steps. What is CJPAC is really, I think, a good fit for a high level group that meets monthly, covers an array of topics. It can be a place that offers routine review and update of ongoing efforts. I think there might need to be some, either the behavioral health subcommittee or a separate entity altogether to provide that convening that the attorney was mentioning would be a great opportunity to, bring the stakeholders together. Again, retain the high level commitment, delve in more to the details that can then be reported back up to CJPAC. We can work out what those specifics would be. And I did volunteer to Dr. Norco to, I've already informed the authors of the report of the commission's interest and that we'd be discussing it. And I did volunteer to follow up after the meeting to share our discussion and indicate any next steps where we benefit from their assistance as we get started. Attorney Lawler, I think you're up next. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I obviously, from the division's perspective, I would concur in a lot of what Chris just said. We'd obviously be interested in any type of further diversionary programs, particularly for these low-level offenders. From our perspective, we do have the ESI program that we have utilized in the past to try and target folks that we can divert out when there are available community resources. Just from a bigger picture perspective, kind of along the lines of what Hamiyun was talking about, I think, the first thing, we would like to help you work on is, figuring out, what is the number actually of the low-level offenders that we're dealing with here. Being able to use the data that CJIS can provide and perhaps our new case management system can provide here to try and get a handle on, where this is occurring. Are there any outlier GAs where there are particular, there's a lot of this type of business for you coming in from. And then in particular, a further kind of narrowing there of who's requesting it. As Chris points out, I think most of us try and avoid using the restoration system in misdemeanor cases because of how cumbersome it is, how there are so many other resources, whether it's Psych AR or a lot of other treatment programs, to try and divert those folks out earlier on, to find out who is in fact requesting it, because that's something that we can then working with others to find funds to increase training to get people to not use that club in their bag unless it's absolutely necessary, for lack of a better golf reference. And then lastly, I think it's important, as Chris points out, a lot of these misdemeanor cases, I would just assume based on my own personal experience, are the frequent flyers that we have in the system, where, these people are getting arrested 50, 100 times. And, those are the people who I really think we do have to go through the process, even though the cases are minor, because if we just drop it, they're back the next day. The police, as Chief Kenny could point out, say, hey, we just arrested this guy last week and he's back out again. Why is that? And so in order to get people to kind of be forced into the mental health treatment that we know that they need, most likely that would require a probationary sentence or someone monitoring them in the community for an extended period of time, particularly in order to assure medication management. So, if we do have other opportunities where we do have programming where we don't need to burden probation with that, where we can have confidence that there is a community resource, that's something that I think prosecutors with appropriate training, understanding with public defender's office that these resources are available, we can figure out where it's occurring, target increased treatment providers in that local community, and then be able to work together with the judicial branch and with the defense bar to kind of peel those people off so that, Chief Kenny can have confidence that they're not going to be just having to rearrest the person, a few weeks later when they're back at the mall harassing the same lady who works at Charo that they did the last time. That kind of thing is where I think we can use the data that we have to kind of try and target this. So, and, I would just like to have our people help you to kind of get our hands around the problem, understand where it's occurring, and then use the resources that Mark can provide to try and target and help consumers.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about the importance of our using the data to identify where we need to intervene and in what way we need to intervene. And I expect that there will be different strategies that we can employ depending on what we find.
Great point. And I see Chief Kinney's hand up, and I'll just mention real quickly that OPM has been in touch with the Judicial Branch Court Support Services Division about enhancements to the monthly indicators report to provide more detail on front-end pretrial diversion, ways to track those cases. We have some pretty rich information on the back end of the system regarding types of discretionary releases applied. We'd like to enhance how we capture that information on the front end. That can give us an ability to incorporate more information about the jail re-interview program, treatment pathways program, use of pretrial supervision. So from at least our division's perspective, as we become more familiar with the nuances of the data, we hope that can enhance perhaps even more focused review of the information. Thanks for your questions and comments, Attorney Lawler. I'll turn next to Chief Kinney, sir.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just want to agree with Mr. Lawler. Many times the police are out of frustration or having to resort to an arrest to get the person into the system because we've exhausted all community avenues. And quite frankly, many of these people that are out there that are labeled as frequent flyers for us don't rise to the point where we can do an emergency committal on them, sending them to the hospital for an examination. And they've come back and we're dealing with them on sometimes a daily basis. I just hope that the misdemeanor is not eliminated from the restoration, as Mr. Lawler has said, because quite frankly, they're the people that we're dealing with that really need the help.
Yeah, so the idea isn't to be prohibitive, but to look for places where we can do better with options other than hospitalization for those people. So you're absolutely right. We see that a lot. Anecdotally though, we understand what's going on because there are cases that I hear about at the hospital where people are there on a breach of peace or larceny 6, and it just seems a very expensive and unfortunate way to deal with their mental illness problems, and we're just looking to see if we enhanced our ability to provide services and enhanced housing opportunities, could we do better for at least some portion of those people?
That makes good sense, sir. And I thought it was very helpful to Dr. Norco, the possible pilot program. Had you had you proceeded to think about a possible site, an ideal site for the pilot in terms of large, medium, small jurisdiction, JD, ways this would intersect with other, kind of ongoing initiatives? Or is this more in the big picture framework stage? I don't want to rush you along, but wondered if you had any further detail that might help people to get, as we said earlier, get our arms around your vision.
Yeah, well, we've started to have discussions about this. Chris Burke and I had a meeting with Judge Gold to talk about this. And what we need to do is to look at courts or localities where we have a high enough volume that we can hopefully affect some kind of change, but also where we have a good level of existing resources and a good working team in terms of a jail diversion clinician and our community forensic team. And so we have not yet identified where we think this might be best, but those are some of the things that we're looking for. Sometimes you have a good functioning team, but it's in a court where the volume is not as high as other places, and that might not be the ideal spot. So we're still going to be looking at where to propose this, and looking for input from the various stakeholders about that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Norco. I appreciate that, and I'll call on Attorney Lawler in just a minute, but did want to just say that we, to the extent the Court Support Services Division, the Judicial Branch, or Judge Gold or Judge Carroll have any insights. I know we're touching a lot on court operations, on bail review and pretrial assessment and pretrial supervision and more. So I wanted to make sure they know the floor is open to them if they wish to weigh in or ask any questions. But in the meantime, Attorney Lawler, to you, sir.
Yeah, I would just add, we do have locations, particularly where we have ESI right now, located where we have some folks who are more experienced at trying to identify the low-level cases for prospective diversion into existing community providers. But I really think, one of the first places we should really start, when we talk about this is, is where this is occurring currently. I think, using Humayun to identify, are there any outlier districts where this is more of a problem than other places that might help you in making that decision about where the business is really occurring. And also, where you might get the most bang for the buck early on. So I think that that's probably the most appropriate place to start, is seeing where are these low-level cases coming out of, and then see what resources are there so that we can kind of build into the existing framework and try and target a location like that. In the alternative, again, we have locations where we have some existing apparatus already. So, we'd be happy to work with you and Judge Gold in identifying an appropriate location, obviously with Attorney Rapillo as well.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you indeed. Director Roberge, if you would care to contribute, grateful to hear from you. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to jump in. I agree with what Attorney Lawler is saying. I mean, I think if we take a look at where the cases are coming from, and then even a deeper dive as to what have we already used for diversion alternatives, and then maybe see what may be missing in that menu, it'll give us a better idea of what we can concentrate on for people that are, involved in the system, right? Because we know, like the chief said, like Attorney Lawler was saying, and Attorney Rapillo, a lot of these are just folks that come in, if not daily, weekly, monthly. We see them time after time. So, Dr. Norco, I was wondering, are there any diversion programs that you've seen in the report or the literature that, we have a pretty nice network here. You talked about jail diversion. I can't believe it was started in 2004. That makes me feel old, because I remember when the branch worked with Demas to get office space in all the courts for that program. We have the ASSIST program in the AIC network. We have our Sierra Center, a residential program for individuals with mental health needs. We have a decent network, but are there things that you saw through this process that maybe Connecticut doesn't have that other jurisdictions are using to address this issue?
So, one of the things about reading the report is that there wasn't anything startling in it, right? And we've done many of these things, but I think the parts that stood out to me were that we don't quite do such a good job of trying to do restorations in the community. And the reason for that are all of the things that we've been talking about. And that got me to thinking about, so what would it take to be able to handle some of these more challenging individuals in the community? And it would take, at the very least, a place where we could, we do have forensic respite beds that we contract for in various places, but we've not used them specifically for this purpose, for competency restoration. So, we have a lot of experience with a lot of these different types of diversion with respite beds. It's just a question of trying to put all that together, all of our experience together, in a way to try to expand our capacity to restore people or divert people from restoration without having to use all of the competence process. So I think the respite bed part is kind of the critical piece, is enhancing bed capacity, where, because, you know, what we understand is going on is that people are, you know, all of these guys that you're talking about, you're seeing daily or weekly, everybody just wants them in a safe place for a while so we can get a handle on trying to help them better.
Thank you, Doctor.
I agree. Thank you, sir. If I could ask you, Dr. Norco, what are some of the barriers to adequate respite bed capacity? Is it the availability of the bed, the capacity existing? Is it insurance, funding? I'm just curious if it's a supply or demand, or certainly a very complex issue to describe at a state level, but I wondered if you could help maybe to paint a picture of what are the dynamics we're up against regarding providing these respite beds to the population.
Yeah, so I think the first obstacle is funding. So that's something that we need to think about, and we're hoping that, you know, there may be, we've had discussions with Mark and others in his department about the possibilities of, if burn JAG grants start flowing again, that we might be able to apply for some funds to try some of these approaches using that kind of money. So that's really the first step. I mean, we kind of know how to do respite beds. We kind of know how to do diversion. We've just, we haven't put all these things together to try to handle and target a population that otherwise is getting sent to the hospital on low-level charges. So that's kind of the challenge. But I don't think, you know, one of the things that, and it's not in the report, but I remember that about 15 years ago, Seattle, Washington was concerned about the number of these high service utilizers. And so they did a study to identify, and they identified, I forget how many, the top 50, the top 200, I forget what the number was. And they just targeted those individuals for services, for housing, for employment, whatever they needed. And they saw a dramatic drop in their recidivism rates for arrest, in their use of competency restoration services. So it's the same kind of thing, that with the proper data and targeting of people and what they need, then we can start to develop programs that will help them better than what we currently have.
That's a very good point. And I appreciate that. I like the next steps that we've identified, and I won't be able to be exhausted of listing them, but I see just offering the ability for the search feature, and eventually the transfer workflow feature to enable you to look at individual search and exchange. So the search feature to be able to identify the case and ultimately the exchange as that rolls out, but also some of the potential data that exists in current case management systems could give insights into where there is a need, where there's a volume, perhaps a higher rate of these cases. And that opens doors then to where there is accompanying that volume, teams in place of providers and practitioners in criminal justice system and other systems to effectively stand up a pilot. And I wanted to say that I think the pilot is really appealing because it enables a proof of concept almost, setting a population, setting up the right parameters. And as Dr. Norco mentioned, we did discuss earlier this week reason for optimism that our division has, that the burn JAG funds, which Connecticut has been unable to accept for the previous 4 fiscal years due to ongoing litigation over immigration-related conditions in the grant, the hope is that those conditions could be addressed in as soon as in the current calendar year. We have, through our national association, been trying to engage the new administration to notify them of the handful of states that have been unable to accept their awards. And we are encouraged about the removal of such conditions prospectively, and we're hopeful that retroactively we could regain access to those funds. There's reason for optimism. I don't have anything certain about timing of it, but our the new administrator in our division, Chidi Nuanelli, has been starting to convene conversations with stakeholders, many of whom are on this commission, to talk about the Burn JAG grant, what worked, what didn't, where it could be, how the strategic plan could be developed, and how, yes, returning a fund could help to stand up programs like this that are clearly interbranch, multiple levels of government, cross system. So I wish I had more specifics on that topic, but do feel reason for optimism, and it indeed has been a topic of conversation. Are there other further questions or comments from any member of anyone on the commission for Dr. Norco? Very good. If I could turn back to you, sir, about next steps. My proposal would be that I could write to the authors of the report and indicate that we've dedicated significant time in this meeting to the report to find fit for Connecticut. I could inquire about whether someone who worked on it could join a convening of a representative group of stakeholders to discuss the report. I could even share your presentation in advance so they could see how you kind of align the report with what is happening in Connecticut. Maybe that could help to shape up the plan. I don't know if that might be a separate meeting from CJPAC, but I would certainly encourage and invite a return to CJPAC for an update on how that meeting went and then a discussion of next steps. I'd like CJPAC to be a hub at a minimum, but would like, I don't know if that could be some helpful next steps for you, sir. I'm all ears for your recommendations at all.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think in the interim we'll also be in touch about using CJIS, about using state's attorneys, CSSD, in terms of gathering data and thinking about where it would be most likely that we could see some impact in a given location, and from there, I'm sure we'll have more informal meetings of some of the key stakeholders, and try to keep the momentum going on it, and at least trying to figure out what might be the best way to intervene and plan and be ready for the possibility that some funds may become available through grants at some point later this year.
Yes, sir. Completely agree. Terrific. Well, I can't thank you enough, Dr. Norco, for raising this and for your work in the presentation. Obviously, reviewing a report is one step, but you went the extra mile with the presentation. And many thanks to all the members for their thoughtful questions and reactions. As I anticipated earlier in the meeting, we probably won't have much time for updates, but I want to acknowledge that we'll probably have to expand or contract given the meeting on the updates. I really enjoy them because it enables people to raise issues where there are openings for collaboration. Part of why I like meeting updates as well is perhaps the topics that we cover in the presentation section didn't touch on subject matter area of expertise for members. So you have a few more minutes. We will end at 11 as promised, but I did want to open up the floor if anyone would care to offer an update or share any bit of information with the commission. I'd like to allow that space and time. I believe I see, Mr. Burke, Chris Burke, thank you. The floor is yours, sir.
Thanks, Mark. I'll make this very quick. Thank you, Dr. Norco, for that presentation and all the feedback. I took copious amounts of notes, a huge undertaking, but all the confidence in the world that we can do this. I want to just briefly, in 30 seconds perhaps, announce a couple of award grants we were awarded yesterday that are related to reentry and diversion. The reentry one is, it's a $150,000 grant where we're going to partner with Alliance for Living in Southeastern Connecticut and Safe Futures to do some in-reach to York Correctional Facility around with inmates there who are soon to re-enter. This is sentenced, unsentenced. We're going to use peer navigators. We're going to do education. We're working with the City of New London. Very exciting stuff on that particular one. The second one is jail diversion. through the work of a work group, which is part of a subcommittee of Alcohol and Drug Policy Council, chaired by Captain Murgo in East Haven. We were also awarded a $150,000 grant to do some, and again, this is in building on an existing programs, adding some features to it, but the infrastructure already existed. 6 police departments, including East Haven, North Haven, Brantford North, Brantford, Guilford, Madison, along with private partners at BH Care, Continuum of Care, we're going to enhance clinical staff in the off hours, meaning 5 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. So for anybody who has worked, certainly law enforcement or those who partnered with them in the off hours, having them have resources to clinical staff is challenging. One of the interesting features to this is we're going to introduce a telehealth component to have instant access to clinicians during those, again, 5 p.m. to 8:30 a.m., which could include telehealth. It could include face-to-face. And again, the Peer Navigator theme is in both of these initiatives, so we'll be adding some staff to that. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it.
Thank you for those updates and congratulations on the awards, and appreciate the impact they're going to have in the jurisdictions where they will be provided. And I especially celebrated the time period that you mentioned, the 5:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m., providing that around-the-clock coverage for people in need. Plus, just the importance of the peer navigators. I've been a long proponent of them in my prior work in terms of helping people to receive the kind of additional support as they work through any behavioral health need. So thank you. Other members care to provide any updates? Make any notes? Chairman Giles, thank you. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to quickly take note of an initiative that we have going on to replace all of our video conference equipment and expansion, which is in partnership with corrections and also compatible with the courts equipment. So that's a big to-do, and we're excited about how that's going to help us to continue to do our work.
That's great. Mr. Chairman, not sure if was that part of the coronavirus emergency supplemental funding?
That was part of a CSF grant we got.
Oh, great. Great. Well, congratulations. And those grants are intended indeed to help agencies manage the IT adaptations when face-to-face is not possible or safe in certain respects. Congratulations and great work.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll just make a final update, just with the remaining time. I wanted to just acknowledge and appreciate the judicial branch, which before our last meeting posted a request for proposal for a victimization survey. This is something that the Victim Issues Subcommittee that Natasha Pierre chairs has been engaging in strategic planning over. In some ways, it's an example of a topic that was raised at CJPAC, relegated to the subcommittee to study, and then reports back with updates. Thanks to the Judicial Branch's Office of Victim Services Director, Linda Cimino's tireless effort, the RFP is now live for a technical and program assistance provider to carry out a victimization survey in Connecticut. It has 4 key parts to it, from project management, survey and focus group data collection, a final report, as well as a final presentation and meeting. And what's astonishing to me is the timeline. It's the deadline for submitting questions for interested respondents to the RFP is February 6th, and people interested in submitting, the deadline is February 16th. And the intention is, I think, for the program period to launch soon thereafter in March, with one complete year of work or 12 months of work to develop and carry out a means of collecting information regarding incidences of victimization in our state. And it's going to provide a pretty rich picture of victims' perspective of their cases of again, victimization. So congratulations and thank you to everyone for their hard work on getting that RFP posted. I'd be happy to provide more information about locating that RFP, but wanted to end with on a high note for our to the judicial branch. With that, I see it's 11 o'clock, and I wanted to thank you all so much for the last 2 hours of time together on these topics. It was a real, sparked a lot of good discussion. Dr. Norco, my hat's off to you, sir, for your work and your presentation, and thanks to all members for their contributions. I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and we'll see each other next month. Our next meeting is February the 25th at 9 a.m., and it'll be virtual again.